There you go, Miss Jennifer.
Thank you, Rita. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board Development Committee of the West End Opportunity Partnership. It is 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll go ahead and get started today. I want to welcome my fellow committee members, along with Amy Cubbage, Rita Phillips, and Laura Douglas. We're missing one person, but we have quorum, and we'll go ahead and get started with our agenda today. We have two sets of meeting minutes to approve. One that was amended by request of Gina Dunlap, and we'll welcome Michael Brown to our meeting now. It looks like he's getting logged on as well. Welcome, Michael. We're just getting started. So we have two sets of meeting minutes to approve today. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review those in your packet. The edit that was made is reflected in blue of the August 15th meeting minutes. And that was the revision that Gina shared at our last meeting regarding the CDFI portion of that discussion on August 15th. The other set of meeting minutes is from our last meeting on September 19th. I'll entertain a motion for approval as soon as you're ready.
Has everybody gotten the minutes? Okay.
I make a motion.
I got them, but I didn't.
You're on mute, Alicia.
I thought I heard someone talking or asking a question. No, I make a motion. Jennifer, help me out. I make a motion that the minutes be accepted with the necessary corrections.
Thank you, Alicia. A motion to accept the meetings as amended, the meeting minutes as amended. Do we have a second?
I'll second Chris.
Thank you, Chris. I heard you first. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Any opposition to that motion? All right, that motion did pass. Thank you all so much. So the purpose of today's discussion is to review where we are to date in terms of our open seats. As a reminder, we have 4 open seats, technically, although we have 2 current board members whose terms expired in June that we need to attend to, and we'll talk about that this afternoon. And then 2 open seats because of the Federal Reserve Bank's decision to decline their seat, which is the edit that we just made from the August meeting minutes. So we're still seeking a candidate to fill the financial seat. And then we have an open seat because of David Kaplan's exit from our board as he entered the Louisville Metro Mayor's administration. And so we're seeking someone to represent the philanthropy seat. So let me start there, and then we'll work backwards to the Republic Bank and NAACP expirations. We still are looking for qualified candidates to be considered by this committee for those 2 seats, the philanthropic and the financial seats. If you recall at the last board meeting, I issued a call to action and asked our fellow board members to please submit names of candidates. And so far we haven't received any. So I do want us to spend some time together brainstorming if we have candidates, or at least directions that we should go to look for candidates to fill those seats. So I want to start there today and see if you have any particular ideas about how we move forward with filling those 2 seats. Welcome, Dr. Milliner. So glad you can join us.
Jennifer, it's Gina. Just thinking off the top of my head regarding the philanthropic seat, the Community Foundation of Louisville, I believe, is maybe a qualified candidate for that. And certainly I think that they would be able to match the asset requirement. I
Mhm.
forget what it was, but I'm thinking that they would have ample assets on their balance sheet to qualify for that. And maybe just be a generally good candidate because they represent so many philanthropic, donors and things like that. Regarding the financial seat, thinking about CDFIs, Lisk Louisville is gaining traction in the community, and Scott Love is their local executive director. I believe Lisk is one of the largest, if not the largest, nonprofit CDFI in the country. So I'm really excited that they're here. And I've got a professional relationship with Scott, known him for years, and think he would be an awesome partner to have on the board. He also takes time to come to many of our board meetings in person. So I know he's at least following our progress and interested in the work of the partnership.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gina. I want to ask you, Laura, because you and I split up a list of foundations that we were pursuing. Did you talk to anybody at the Community Foundation by chance?
No, I have not.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's a great lead, Gina. Laura, maybe you and I can talk offline about how we want to make that outreach.
Yes.
See if they can, if they would be willing to be considered. So that's great. And then, Gina, would you be willing to introduce us to Scott Love?
I think we all know Scott. We
Okay, I do not.
have a good
So,
working relationship with him.
okay,
Uh-huh.
great. So we will pursue both of those for consideration. Thank you for that, Gina.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Gina. Are there any other suggestions from any other committee members?
Jennifer, just thinking, so again, perhaps if Scott is interested but may not have the bandwidth, some other thoughts that come to mind is Park Community Federal Credit Union, which is also Kentucky's newest community development bank, or CDFI. They operate in that space. I know they've had a recent leadership change, so I don't know
Unknown caller.
what that might, imply for the ask, just thinking about them in that space.
Okay. Thank you. We'll add them to the list as well. Great. Appreciate that. Want to make sure that if anybody else has suggestions, you have an opportunity to weigh in here. And if you don't, that's okay too. We will continue to work any and all leads that we get. And hopefully we'll be able to have progress on filling those 2 seats in the near future. Okay, let's move on to the other 2 vacancies on our board that resulted from terms expiring in June. So just a quick recap, again, just a level set so that we can begin the discussion from just reminding us of where we've been and where we are. We agreed as a committee and then submitted to the full board a recommendation that, given our maturity as it relates to the life cycle of this body, given where we started 2 years ago versus where we are today, we suggested that it would be helpful to this board to have some decision-making authority regarding who is renewed and replaces certain members of us from institutions as our terms come up for expiration. And as such, we agreed that we would ask each institution upon the expiration of terms to submit a minimum of 2 individuals that could be considered by this body to serve on this board, so that we can recontemplate who we're needing, what skills we're needing, what attributes we're needing to ensure we have a diverse board that rounds us out completely. And so that process was communicated to the leaders of Republic Bank and the NAACP. We have heard back from those institutions. Republic Bank has sent us 2 individuals for consideration. One is the current board member William Summers, and another individual whose application is in your inbox. And so I want to take a moment during this meeting for us to discuss the process of how we want to vet those two individuals. But before we talk about that, I want to update you that we've heard back from Mr. Cunningham at the NAACP, and he advised me that they have decided to move forward and only nominate a single candidate, and that is Gina Dunlap, who currently, of course, serves on this committee and is a member of our board. So we want to take some time to discuss a process that this board will be responsible for in responding to institutions who decline to comply with our stated process. I don't know that that is going to be the best use of our time today, because I think we want to get some guidance regarding how the board develops its own authority regarding that type of decision making. I am, however, of course, open to your thoughts and input. If you have an opinion related to that, when we have an institution decline to support a process that we've stated and requested, I'm happy for this committee to discuss that today. I think the more looming decision that we should be focused on first is how to respond to Republic Bank's candidates that they've submitted to us. So we have an application that has been submitted for Mr. Byrd. He has submitted an application for the partnership, Rolandus Byrd, and I hope that I'm saying his first name correctly. I admit that I don't know him, but he has an impressive application. We have an opportunity to interview each of the candidates and to review their application and to come up with a process whereby this committee determines by decision making how we recommend to the full board a particular nominee. So I want to open that up for your input today. If you would like to have a process whereby we meet with each individual, we can schedule a 60-minute Zoom call and split that into 2 20-minute blocks with each candidate, and then have 20 minutes to discuss amongst ourselves and vote to make a recommendation. That's just to put that on the table for your consideration. It's certainly not an idea that I'm married to, because of course I want this committee's input and alignment as to how we move forward together. So let me open it up to you now to get your thoughts. And it looks like we lost J. Michael Brown.
Oh.
Hopefully he'll get back on with us.
Yeah, we lost the feed. I sent him a text. It went
Okay.
black, and then I don't know. I think he was in the car, but I'm going to keep.
Gotcha. Okay, Gina, I see your hand.
Yes. Did you just say that I guess the candidate applications were in our inbox?
You have one application in your inbox. That's from the new candidate, Mr. Byrd. Mr. Summers has already completed an application, but we're going to resubmit that since he's already served on this board. We have had his application on file, but we will resubmit that to this committee prior to the point where we're responsible for making a recommendation.
Jennifer, I sent that to you, but I didn't send it to the whole committee. Let me do that now.
Rita, forgive
My
me.
apologies.
Gina, forgive
My apologies.
me as well.
That's okay.
I
That's
didn't
okay. I got it.
Email.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Great. So what do you all think once you receive the applications and have a chance to review those? What do you think about the notion of scheduling a 60-minute Zoom with both candidates and then giving us some time to deliberate?
I think 60 minutes would be more than enough time to go through that. So I got put on the board, the committee later. So do they have the same criteria that we had for the neighborhood members? Or is there a different scale, or how did they go the first time?
So the institutional members were placed on this board at the request of the individual institutions and or the governor. So there was not a process in place at the time when the institutional board members were seated. So we have an opportunity, Chris, to make those decisions now. And the process that we used for neighborhood representatives was an application, was an interview, and then a discussion. We did have a scoring rubric. Gina worked really hard on creating that, and maybe with some others' input. I have a hard time remembering the details now, but we used that rubric not as a strict or rigid guide or requirement as much as a guideline. So we can talk about the development if you think that tool is useful to us. There is a document, and Rita, I don't know while I'm talking if you can pull it up. When we submitted the letter to the institutions, we articulated again what we're looking for in terms of outlining what are the attributes of a board member that we are seeking. I think that's a useful tool as well. I don't want to overcomplicate this, but I also want to have enough process in place that is supportive of it being full of integrity and us all feeling good about it. So that's why I'm really seeking your input today to make sure there's good alignment amongst this group before we move forward and start vetting candidates.
I'm sending the email and then I'll send that over, Jennifer. Or I'll pull it up. I'm sending the email to the committee.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So Jennifer, just to try to push things along, is there any member of the committee who is not comfortable with using an interview process? Is there anyone who would prefer not to interview the candidates? Okay. Okay.
Great. So given that our next board meeting, I'm pulling up my calendar, is the week after next, and next week is a holiday week, I am wondering what the committee's preference is for trying to make this interview and decision happen in advance of the Monday, November 27th board meeting. I'm looking the Wednesday, the 22nd. Would this committee have availability on the Wednesday, the 22nd, if the candidates could convene for each 20 minutes? And if so, is there a morning or afternoon preference? And sorry to do this logistic in this meeting. I know that's not any of our preferences, but given the timing, if we could button this up and get something landed on the calendar, then we can work backwards to make sure that we get everybody's application and materials to you. Oh, thank you, Rita. So you can see in this document, and we'll make sure that this lands in your inboxes as well for review. These are the attributes that we articulated that an ideal candidate would have.
So the 22nd, of course, is the day before Thanksgiving. So a morning meeting, if we're all comfortable having a meeting on that date, a morning meeting would be better than an afternoon or evening meeting.
I agree. And it looks like that works for Gina. She put in the chat box. So committee members, can I hear if you cannot do the morning of the 22nd? Can you unmute yourselves and let us know that? Oh, good. Chris is saying yes. Okay. Alicia?
I can, as long as it's between 9 and 11.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. Great. Well, why don't we circle back to our candidates and offer them a window between the hours of 9 and 11 a.m. Sounds like that is going to work for us. And then we will use that as our process as we're building experientially this process that we will apply to institutional board members. So Rita, if you'll be so kind to put this document in everyone's emails so that we can review it in advance of the Wednesday meeting, that would be great.
Jennifer, if I could just say something, I was thinking about Chris's question, Chris, with regard to the application, we use the same application. The committee has not tweaked that at all. So that the board in the same application for this evaluation of board members to make whatever adjustments, and that was the original document from the inception of the organization as a guide. So it's a guide, but we're using the same document. Everybody is filling out the exact same document. I just wanted to make sure, Chris, you were clear with that is in fact the case.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rita.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. I want to appreciate you too for clarifying the document versus the process. So that's very helpful. And again, I want us to be empowered to evolve this process as we go, to make sure that, again, it's full of integrity and it feels like it's honoring the importance of selecting board candidates. So I think finding the sweet spot between not having it be overly cumbersome and complicated, but also structured and vetted enough that we're making sure that we're making the right decision on behalf of this board as we recommend candidates to them. Okay, well, that sounds great as it relates to the Republic Bank seat. I want to circle back now because I've given everyone enough time, I think, to reflect on the information that I shared regarding the NAACP seat. I don't want to cut short any comments or discussions around that. If the committee would like to voice any opinion or input around their decision to nominate a single person. Okay, not hearing any discussion. What we'll do is take some time to get some guidance regarding how this committee may move forward in light of that decision. We will be coming back to this committee with some additional information so that we have some various ways forward that we can consider in response to that. I don't think today is the proper time for that because we haven't had enough time to vet or respond to that decision. We just learned of it yesterday. So we certainly will keep that in the parking lot. And we'll come back to that at some point in our future. For now, oh, Gina, I see your hand now.
Yeah, I was just wondering, as we're adopting and implementing this new approach, one of the things, a concern of mine that had come up, I guess, back at the August meeting was whether or not we'd had any preliminary discussions with any of the institutional partners to see how such a process might resonate with them. And I guess in your recounting of what's happened in the last week or so, you talked about, a process. I'm wondering, were there any written communications sent to the institutions? Like, did they get letters and things like that that kind of lays it out and frames it up?
Absolutely. And thank you for your question. I think it's important for everyone to have visibility to how the process was communicated. And it was twofold. It was by communication between our CEO, Laura Douglas, our interim CEO, and the leaders of those institutions. And then it was followed by a formal communication in writing from both Laura and me that summarized the genesis of the decision or the rationale of the decision, as well as those attributes that you just saw Rita show on the screen, with a very direct request to submit a minimum of 2 names. And then we followed up and heard the feedback from each of the 2 institutions.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments on that particular topic?
And this is Chris. My signal kept dropping in and out, so I have no idea what we're talking about.
I'm going to do a quick recap, Chris. Gina was asking how we communicated to the institutions our new process. Since we are now asking for a minimum of 2 individuals from each institution to be nominated or recommended rather. And I told her that we had a formal written communication to the heads of those institutions that was co-signed by Laura and me. And then Laura, on behalf of the partnership, had a direct verbal communication with each of the 2 leaders to explain the rationale for the decision. And then we followed back up. I've had a conversation, multiple conversations with Mr. Cunningham at the NAACP. And then Laura has been in communication with Mr. Traeger at Republic Bank to ultimately learn of their decisions of how they would like to move forward in light of our stated desires of how we'd like to receive candidates for this board.
Okay. So are we going to go back to the NAACP, or was this meeting trying to figure out, should we go back, or do we just go ahead and bring Jenna back?
So that's a great question. I think what I'm happy to take any ideas here. I think that the partnership also wants to gather some additional input as to the intent of the legislation as it relates to the authority of this body in determining its board members now that we are in a more mature place. So there will be some opportunities for us to gather some additional input external from this committee, bring it back to this committee as we determine our way forward. There's a few different ways that we can proceed. Obviously, with Amy as our legal counsel, we'll be wanting to consult her to make sure everything that we do is aligned with the statute. So we will be bringing that information back to this committee at some point in the future. We just haven't had enough time to properly vet this because the decision was just relayed to me yesterday by Mr. Cunningham. With that said, if you or anyone else has opinions as to how this committee should respond if and when an institution declines to honor the stated process of this board, happy to entertain that discussion here today.
Well, I would say that if they give us a candidate that we don't think would fit well, then, and I don't, once again, I don't know the bylaws like that, then we could just say we don't feel that candidate, would work well with the board. So if they don't want to provide another candidate, then, I guess we have to have steps for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that since we have, 2 people who have been involved here, unless the other candidate that's being will be interviewing is that much better than Mr. Summers, feel like the experience that we have with people who've already been on the board, there's not a learning curve, that should give them extra points, in the interview process on whatever scoring metric we use.
Mm-hmm.
The way I look at it.
I hear you. And in the case of Republic, they have offered 2 candidates. So we will be discussing those 2 candidates in that meeting that we're hoping to confirm for next Wednesday. The question becomes, in the event that we only have a single candidate, do we decline and ask for additional candidates before we begin that process? Do we proceed with that single candidate and then take a vote up or down as to whether or not that person is recommended, or some other option that we could also contemplate in the future? So I think this is a new experience for this board, which makes sense. We're still a young board and developing these processes and protocols. So that's why I wanted to bring that to you today while it's fresh from the discussion I had with Mr. Cunningham yesterday, get any early input, and then reassure you that we will be coming back with some ideas to suggest for how we move forward.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for your input, Chris.
Thank you.
Jennifer, this is not exactly a response to your question, but you know, in other board nomination processes I've been a part of, one of the things I noticed is that whenever the committee would always check in with the actual board member to see if they were willing or interested to serve, you know, especially if they had an opportunity for a continuance and things like that. And I'm wondering if we were planning on taking that approach in any way. For example, you know, I guess we could interview Mr. Summers, but, you know, are we even aware if or I guess assuming that he's resubmitted his application, that he is interested, or do we have any sense of that?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Gina. And I think you're right. Perhaps we've been presumptive with both you and Mr. Summers, and should ask the question directly to make sure there is interest in continuing to serve before consideration is given to this particular process. Now, because Mr. Summers did submit an application, I'm going to presume that that means he's interested in serving. I guess the question now begs for your own consideration if you would like to be considered for continuation of your board service. And I don't intentionally put you on the spot in this setting, but I think that's the natural reflection in light of what you just raised.
Well, I would like to continue to serve, and I can work with Rita to submit whatever materials
Okay.
are appropriate.
Okay, very good.
Let me say as well that the feedback from William is that he enjoys his board service. He believes that this is an important institution in the community and that he is also interested in continuing. The feedback from Steve Traeger is also that he believes that William has appropriately communicated with Republic about our activities. He does want, he is interested in William continuing to be a representative for the bank, but he understands what our process is, and that's why he has offered us a second candidate. The second candidate serves on a number of boards in the city on behalf of Republic Bank. So they've actually given us two good choices.
Thank you, Laura. And Gina, I think we'll note moving forward in our board development process to do that very explicit check-in with candidates as their terms are expiring, so that we're really clear about that. So thank you so much for raising it. Is there any other discussion at this point in time regarding this particular matter? Okay, hearing none, that completes the business of this committee for today. Unless there's any other business that someone wants to bring before the committee, I think we'll stand adjourned. All right, thanks everyone. Enjoy. Laura, did you have something? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was getting ready to wave back at Dr. Milliner. I saw her.
Okay. Okay, good. I'll wave too. Good night, everyone. Be back in touch to confirm the 22nd. Thanks for your time tonight.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.